Well, this should be interesting. Matt McCoy is going to join us for episode 11. You know what's unique about Matt is he's the guy that put you and I together, Chad. Go figure that, eh?
Very true. Yes.
Yeah.
So very thankful for him for that, and
You're either
also
thankful or
very
you're like, how do I get out of this relationship? This podcast just never seems to come to an end. Like,
I
when are we
know
going to
we
finish?
90s worship podcast. It is aged like fine wine
That's right.
so
That's right.
far.
Yeah.
So there we
Someone was
go.
just asking me, like, how many episodes are there? When will this podcast end? And I'm like, well, I don't know. I guess when we run out of 90s worship leaders to interview. But there's still quite a few that are on my hit list, and I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah. Well, we're getting them scheduled one by
Yeah.
one.
Yeah. So Matt McCoy, Matt is, of course, the founder of Loop Community, and Matt and I have become quite close friends over the last 10 or more years. We sort of have walked our journey of praise charts and Loop together, so that's been super fun. And I don't know, it's going to be hard to tame me in my conversation with Matt because I know him so well. I'm probably going to throw him a few pot shots here and there just to and we can edit it out. I guess that's what we can do, right? There's always that. But Matt, I know he was formed and birthed as a worship leader through the era that was highly influenced by worship leaders of the 90s, as I was as well. So it will be interesting to talk to him and find out like where that core influence came from. I'm almost as interested talking to the worship leaders of the 90s as I am also talking to, the artists of the 90s, like how it
Yeah.
all kind of came together. So what do you think? Should we just dive in? Here we go.
Let's do
Matt's
it.
standing by. Looking forward to it. Here we go. Matt McCoy, you're responsible
Hey.
for all this, man. This is all you.
Well, when I met Chad and I heard about what he was doing, I'm like, okay, who else do I know that loves and
Yeah.
adores 90s worship music? And I'm like, Ryan Dahl has to talk with Chad. So I'm
Yeah,
glad
I
this has
guess.
happened.
Yeah, I'm turning 54 on Sunday. So when you count the years back, that means it was like in the 90s, I was in my 20s. It's a hugely formative season
Wow.
of life, right?
Yeah.
So,
Well, happy early birthday, my friend.
oh yeah, thank you. Thank you. I'm almost at Freedom 55. So there you go. Finally, I will be free.
Wow.
Matt, how old were you in the 90s? Like, I'm just going to come out and ask. You can't ask a woman this question, but a man, you can say, hey, just tell me how old you are.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I was born in 85. So in the
okay.
90s, yeah, I was 10
You
years
were
old,
10.
right in my
Okay.
10. And then, my early teenage years were the late 90s.
Right.
So,
But still, in the early 2000s, we were still singing all these songs that were written and formed
yeah,
in that 90s era.
yeah, yeah.
So, why don't you
Well, and
tell
I
us a
was,
little bit about that? Like what do you remember as the earliest formative years and influences for you as a worship leader? And this is like before Loop Community. You didn't even
yeah,
know a multi-track existed back then. So
yeah,
this were the early seeds. Tell us about that.
yeah. So I was born in San Diego, California, Southern California,
Yeah.
in 1985 to two hippies. My mom and dad were like Jesus freak hippies, barefoot, riding a motorcycle with a guitar on his back, going up the coast of California, going to some sort of coffee shop where they were having a revival, like that was like Southern California in the 70s, I think it was. Like there was just this huge Jesus movement.
Yeah.
Maybe it was the 60s, but anyways, they were Jesus loving, hippies. And I was born just into this world of constantly being at church, going to Calvary Chapel and going to the Vineyard. My dad was a pastor of a Vineyard church in Southern California. I believe it was the first Vineyard church in San Diego.
Yeah.
And my parents went to Calvary Chapel in San Diego and were heavily influenced by the worship music there. Then I remember this guy named John Wimber came on the scene,
Yes. I
and
was just gonna ask,
and
did your parents like know him or
yeah, yes, yes,
no
yes.
way?
And my
Wow.
parents really were inspired by this new thing called the
Mm-hmm.
Vineyard.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad went out as a church planter from that movement and started, the first vineyard in in San Diego. And so,
Wow.
and that vineyard is actually still there. It's still going. But I remember just, as a 3-year-old, 4-year-old, 5-year-old, just growing up in this small church, probably no more than 200 people,
Yeah.
but constantly being at church, crawling around on the stage during worship practice, hearing the worship songs. My dad played guitar, my mom played piano. I
Yeah.
was just constantly around worship music from
Yeah.
a very, very early age. And then, I remember very clearly my mom playing White as Snow. You remember that old song?
Mm-hmm.
White as snow,
Mm-hmm.
white as snow. I
Yeah.
remember my daughter actually a couple days ago, she was like, play me a song that I've never heard. And
Huh.
I was sitting there on my guitar thinking, okay, what has she never heard? And I played Lord, I Lift Your Name on High, which I don't even know what year that was written.
Yeah.
But that song, I do remember very clear. I have vivid memories of being in church as like a 5 or 6 year old and loving that song and then playing
Mm-hmm.
that in the vineyard. And so, all that to say, I mean, I was born and raised in worship music. And, in the years that I'm really remembering, it was the early 90s, where they were
Mm-hmm.
singing all these old, Winds of Worship songs. I remember we used to get all the Vineyard CDs. I remember one of my jobs at our church was to set up our Vineyard like bookstore where we sold like CDs. That's
Yeah.
when churches had like little bookstores.
Yeah.
And I remember when Vineyard would send us the new album every once in a while,
Yeah.
there'd be like the Vineyard Cafe series and
Yeah.
the Touching the Father's Heart series. I mean, I remember listening to these CDs over and over and
And
over.
over and over again. That's the thing. Like, look at on Chad's shirt there. He's got the cassette tape, which young people today don't even know what that is. But in those days,
Yeah.
you'd stick that in the car and just play these
Yeah.
songs
Yeah.
over and over. And we were just interviewing Don Moen last week, and that's like the whole integrity music. It was like this whole wave of songbooks and songs that came out, and then at the same time, Vineyard had this an other stream. The Winds of Worship. It's just like CD after
Yeah.
CD and songbook after songbook. I don't know
Yeah.
if you had. I had those little spiral bound books. It's like the early version of praise charts where
Mhm.
physical sheet music. You'd go to bookstores
Yeah.
and buy them just looking for a new fresh song
Yeah.
to sing.
I remember us
Yeah.
just being on the edge of our seat waiting for the next songbook and Vineyard CD to come
Right.
out. And then we'd listen to it and we'd mark down like, oh, we got to do this song. We'd have, maybe 4 or 5 on there that we'd have to do. And then we'd
Yeah.
literally just pass. I think before then you couldn't even copy CDs. So like we would just
Yeah.
pass the CD around to different people in our church on the worship team and be like, hey, learn this song.
Wow.
And, learning In the Secret and Arms of Love and Pour Out My Heart, Refiner's Fire. I mean,
Uh-huh.
oh my gosh, so many good ones. I
Yeah.
just had a memory, and I don't know if this was late 80s, but I just remember my grandma, she always ran the overhead projector at our church, and I would stand next to her when she did that.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember her singing the song, Blessed be the Lord God
God
Almighty,
Almighty.
who was and is to
Yeah.
come. That was probably 80s, but
We could have an
that
episode
just,
where we just like start singing out songs like that, we
I
just
know, we should sit at the
remember.
piano. I'll sing a
Yeah,
song,
that's
you sing
right.
a song.
And it's
That would be
almost like
fun.
when you sing that, it awakens something in me that I almost forgot was there. It's like,
I
oh
know.
yeah, I really knew that song. Like
Yeah.
I listened to that song so many times. That was Bob Fitz, what you just sang. It's almost like there's these dormant emotion that
Yeah.
is connected to my life, Chad, your life, Matt, your life. You would think about your relationships, your parents, the church you were in,
Mhm.
all the things. That's what music music does to us, and
Yeah.
so formative, right?
It was, yeah, it's such a sweet era of worship
Right.
music. Very personal, very
Yeah.
just simple songs. Like it wasn't, a
Mm-hmm.
lot of the songs were not like overly poetic, I guess I'd say. Like they're
Yeah.
not like, they're not abstract, like where you have to like really think about what's happening. And
Yeah.
they were lyrics that you could just memorize very
Yeah.
easily because a lot of times you were just repeating things over and over.
Yeah.
Um, and just very personal songs that
Yeah.
people could just sing to God. And I love that era. And I still, to this day, I mean, I actually have a list right here on my phone that you
Wow.
probably can't see it, but I have a list on my phone called classic worship songs that I still to this day, when I play guitar for my daughter as she goes to sleep, I'm playing these songs. I'm actually like
Really?
rarely playing a song in the past decade.
Can you
You know,
read us that list? I want to know
I'm
what's on your phone.
I'm playing like, remember I Love Your Presence? I love your presence. That was a
Yeah.
Vineyard one. Or I believe in
Believe in
Jesus,
Jesus. I
and I
believe
believe
he
he's
is.
here now. Yeah.
Yes, totally.
Your name is like honey on my
My
lips,
lips, your
your
spirit like
spirit like
water.
water.
Yeah.
Yeah. Give thanks. Give
Give
thanks
thanks with a
with a
grateful
grateful
heart.
heart. You know, and then you get a little bit later 90s, you know, like Let My Words Be Few, Matt
Uh,
Redman.
you are God in heaven, and here I am. Da, da.
Yeah.
Almost forgot the lyrics, but I still got that melody in my. Do you
There was a
recognize some of these
vineyard.
songs, Chad? Does that does are these songs
Yeah,
part of your world as well?
yeah. I mean, I would say most, if not all of those,
Yeah.
definitely ended up in our church,
Yeah.
set list back in the day for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Remember, You Are in Control? You are my
Yeah.
shepherd. I have no need.
Yeah.
Oh
You
yeah.
lead me. I mean, a lot. I go pretty like deep cut on Vineyard music. So
Yeah.
almost
Yeah.
this whole list, 97% of it is Vineyard songs.
Yeah.
Um, but it was just special, and I remember these songs, you know, every word of them. And some modern ones that are written these days, I can't remember. I even lead it like 5 times,
Yeah.
you know, a quarter, and I can't remember them.
Yeah.
And I think that's, I don't know. I just think there's something there about that because I
Mm.
think there's something about these songs like really like living inside of your heart and you can
Yeah.
come back to them at any time
Yeah.
in random moments.
Yeah.
And I'm not bashing modern songs, but I do think that like we've maybe gotten too
Yeah.
artistic, too
Yeah.
creative. Not like there's a space for that, and there should
Mm-hmm.
also be a space for just simple spirit songs that people can
Mm-hmm.
remember and sing at any moment. And
Mm-hmm.
the 90s nailed that.
Mm-hmm. I'm thinking I don't know if I should ask this question or not. So if it's a bad question, we'll just edit this out. But Matt, like you and I, we started into this world of worship with such innocence, and then we got involved in the industry of it, like the production, the copyright, the licensing, the trips to Nashville, the
Hmm.
worlds that we both have kind of evolved into, and I think like how can we preserve the innocence that we're so fond of in those early years, and yet
Hmm.
I mean, so I certainly I feel very positive about the roles that you and I are in today, but there is some intentionality that we can bring to what we do that's like, let's not forget,
Hmm.
back in the day when it was just a simple song with an acoustic guitar that somehow like touched my heart and
Yeah.
wasn't like overproduced or over.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts about
Well,
maintaining the
first of all, I do
innocence?
think that form of writing is going to come back. I think there's going to be a
Yeah,
resurgence of it. I
good.
do think too that what you're doing, Chad, with the '90s worship docu-series and the new albums, like the re-records, is also very good because it's bringing these songs back to life, like giving them kind
Yeah,
of a fresh wind. What I don't know, and I'd actually be curious if Chad, if you've seen anything of like, you know, we have such attachment to these songs, and I don't know if it's just a nostalgic thing. Is it just nostalgia, or there really something very special about them? Like if you
Yeah.
were to play it for a 13-year-old kid now, would they be moved by it, or would they be like, this is totally lame? And you know what I
Yeah.
mean? We were 13 when when I was
Yeah.
13 when Better is One Day came out, and it was an unbelievable song. I was, 13 or 14 when Lord, let your glory fall. You are
Yeah.
good. You are good. And it was just,
And your love endures.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if you played that now at a youth group to 13-year-olds, would they love it, or would they think it's like not as cool, as the new Elevation Rhythm stuff, or you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I don't know if it's like a nostalgia piece, or you know what I mean? I don't, what do you think, Ryan? I think that bringing them back to life though, like this, is good to let people hear these songs that have maybe
Mm-hmm.
been forgotten.
Yeah, well, I think there's no question that nostalgia is a piece of it. I think it's also why my parents love the hymns,
Yeah.
because and my grandparents, because that's the nostalgia for them. Ours is the 90s, and yet we still appreciate the
Yeah.
hymns and the value that they bring, and perhaps we're hoping that maybe my kids would appreciate some of the value. I don't know if I would
Hmm.
consider, like, when I look at the hymns, we think, oh, we want to maintain the theology or the rich,
Yeah.
lyrical heritage. But then what we're talking about now is, could we maintain some of that sort of innocence and purity of heart? Certainly the lyrics were way simpler. The chords were,
Yeah.
the production was simpler, but there's something we want to sort of carry from each generation.
Hmm.
And I can't deny that there is
Yeah.
nostalgia, because I think nostalgia just associating my personal memories with some other emotive
Hmm.
connection, like a song. That isn't that what nostalgia is? So it's
Yeah.
not a bad thing. It
Yeah.
is just how we are. So
I think, Ryan, you and I, running,
yeah,
praise charts and loop community, we just need to, I think, not let these songs fade into the distance,
right.
like
Yeah,
bring some attention back to them,
yeah,
which is with these new recordings that you're doing, Chad, I think is awesome because
yeah,
it gives us an opportunity to bring them back
yeah,
and show people that, there was a whole era of worship music way before all the stuff you're hearing now
mm-hmm,
that started it. Like there's a history.
yeah,
And gosh, I still love it. It's still my favorite era. And those are the
yeah,
songs when I sit down at my piano, those are the songs I play. I'm
right,
playing all those old ones.
yeah,
Maybe I'm an old person now. Maybe I'm now what, we thought,
yeah,
oh, those old people just want the hymns all the time. Maybe
yeah.
I'm that guy now, but I don't
Chad,
know.
you're going from church to church now doing these songs. Like, what are you experiencing? What's the response like from people? What age range is there? Or
Yeah,
is it nostalgia, or are you reaching new people with these songs? What do you find is happening?
it's a good question.
Yeah, I mean, I think so far, it's been more the nostalgia
Yeah.
aspect. But I think as we move along and definitely gain more brand awareness, and we get the docu series launched, hopefully September is the
Yeah.
plan there. But I do think that we will see, the younger generation, gravitate, towards, really this movement, for lack of a better term. 'Cause
Yeah.
I really believe that's what it is, and two, I think it's great that, and I think, Matt and Ryan both, being able to, come full circle with these songs and these types of worship nights, revisiting these songs, but being able to do it with 21st century technology,
Yeah.
having, Pro Presenter and all the graphics and lighting. And I know we're going to be in New York City, Matt, doing a night here at the end of June. And that church uses Loop Community, so able to, get
Cool.
those stems in,
Mm-hmm.
from our versions of some of those songs and use those. So it's
Yeah.
really exciting, to have all of that at hand, because I get asked that question a lot, like, really, what were the differences between 90s era worship and today? And I think it really starts a lot of that discussion with the technology, that was available then and made you do certain things a certain way, and have a certain
Mhm.
approach, and being able to use modern technology to
Hmm.
bring some of these songs back has been a great joy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think about because we're also recording some projects. We just did an Easter project with Travis Cottrell, and one of the top songs we did from there was "Worthy is the Lamb," which I think maybe was early 2000s. But Darlene Jack, "Worthy
Where
is the Lamb,
is the Lamb
seated on the
seated on the
throne."
throne?
Right, and
Um,
so gorgeous. But I felt so proud to see that song rise and rise and rise in
mhm.
its like people were adopting it, and now we're recording a couple of hymns projects, and I know that we're also going to want to redo like what you're doing with some of these old
Yeah,
classics, and I'm just kind of thinking to myself the unique artistic opportunity you have when you're not writing a song, you're taking a song that existed, but there is an opportunity to remake it and not ruin it, but just give it a lift into our current era. Like this is exactly what you're doing, Chad. And that is a very unique art because if you redo it and you're like, well, I don't even recognize the song anymore, you might as well have just written a new one. So
yeah,
it's almost like taking an old antique and I don't know, just refinishing it, but you wanting to bring back
Mhm.
the goodness of what it was. There is this opportunity. I feel like certainly in the praise charts world, we're going to be investing into that, both with hymns and now also with what we call like these retro type songs, because there's
Mhm.
something special about them, and
Yeah.
it takes as much skill in arranging a song, in a beautiful way that lifts it into our current.
Yeah. You know what
So
was
yeah,
special about that era too is that it
yeah,
didn't feel over saturated. Like I remember just being like waiting for the next album to come out. Like you
yeah.
had, Delirious was I remember when they released like the live or cutting edge albums with like Message of the Cross and Singer Song, Oh Deep
Hmm.
for the Mountains Tremble, Lord You Have My Heart. Like those songs were huge. And then like you wait a couple months and then there'd be like a Tim Hughes album with, the Here I Am to Worship and Maker of All Things. Then Matt Redman, and then like Vineyard stuff. Once a year, a Passion album. But I feel like now it's like all of what I just said in like a
Happens every
month,
week.
every week, even. Yeah. Like,
Yes.
bam, Apple Music just has tons and tons and tons of worship
Yes.
music. And you're sorting through it. And um, there was a huge anticipation back then. I remember when
Yes.
Matt Redman was releasing his new album, and it was the Father song, I believe, and
Yeah.
driving to the Christian bookstore with my mom to buy that CD and the music songbook along with it, and immediately going home and learning them. And literally, those were the songs then that I learned as like a 14-year-old worship leader.
yeah,
So there was such a huge just anticipation. I feel like it wasn't taken for granted. Like we actually really ingested everything on those CDs. It wasn't like just one song. It was
Hmm.
we used every song on the album.
Hmm.
It felt like.
Truly.
So
It's like those melodies embedded deep into our spirits, like they cut into our emotions.
yeah,
Whereas what we're saying is nowadays, the song barely has a chance to scratch the surface, and then the next song is like right there, compelling you
yeah,
to go, "Oh, that's a great song as well." And they are
yeah,
great songs, but they don't cut so deep
yeah,
into our like emotional DNA, like the
yeah,
cassette tape that's
yeah.
on Chad's shirt.
They
It's
had more
just,
time to like
yeah,
we had more time to like soak in them because
yes,
there wasn't so much happening and you weren't just moving on to the next thing. Like you played one CD over and over and over and over and over and over until you've learned all those songs and played all of them.
mm-hmm,
And then maybe a new one would come out and you learn that. But I think that was special too because it was just like
yeah,
every song was special.
great, yeah.
It's what we had. Gosh, I really
Unfortunately,
sound
I don't
old.
see
It feels
us.
like it's like,
Yeah,
hey, back in the day,
I
we
know.
used to walk to school
Seriously.
barefoot.
And I don't really see us going back. It's like we're not going to shut down the internet. We're not going to Spotify and
Mhm.
Apple Music aren't going
Yeah.
away and Amazon that's so we have to invent a new way to reach deep into people's hearts. I wonder
Yeah.
what we can do to, you know, I don't know.
Well, I think that's probably why the songs are getting more and more complex and more artistry, because you kind of have to like do something to stand out above the others because there's just so many.
Right. Yeah.
And so like a simple song doesn't seem to even have like stand a chance because it's
Hmm.
like, I don't know.
Hmm.
Like if you released, do you remember Arms of Love? I sing a
Mm-hmm.
simple song of love to my
To my
Savior, to my
Savior. Yeah.
Jesus. Grateful for the things you've done. I mean, so simple. Those lyrics are just like someone literally just writing like a journal entry to
Yeah.
God. I wonder what would happen if that song was released today,
Right.
um, in the midst of,
I love you,
songs.
Lord. I exalt thee. These are
Yeah,
songs. I mean, can remember being at a Lauren Daigle concert where she wowed us with all these incredible songs she written, and then she just cut into this worship moment and started singing "I Exalt Thee." But the whole place,
yeah,
just the
yeah.
sound suddenly filled the room, with
Hmm.
harmonies, and it was beautiful.
Hmm.
So I think there is still something compelling about
Yeah,
those songs. Need to reach
yeah.
for that.
Do you think though that was the older crowd singing? Like I just wonder like what
Yeah,
we should actually ask. I want to talk to like a 12-year-old, a 13-year-old in
yeah,
youth group and be like, "What do you think of this song?" I might send, like people send people new songs like, "Hey, check this song out." I'm going to send someone a
Yeah.
song and be like, "Let me know what you think of this. Check out this new worship song."
yeah. Right.
Because
Seriously.
I'm curious if like, because I know what you mean. I've been in those rooms where you're like at a concert, like a
Yeah.
Hillsong concert, and they do all
Yeah,
their songs, but then all of a sudden
yeah,
they bust into "We glorify your name, glorify thy
yeah.
name,"
Right.
and the place just erupts. But it's like,
Yes.
who's singing? Like, is it the people like us, like the old people?
Yeah,
I would love to know what the perspective is of the younger generation on those.
yeah.
I'd be
Wow.
surprised if it doesn't actually touch and move them though, because um, it's also those are such also great songs for like teaching people to worship. Like as a worship
Yeah.
leader, those
Mm-hmm.
are such amazing tools to have in your tool belt as a worship leader when you're like trying to teach a congregation how to sing, how to worship. I remember I was on staff at a church in Chicago. The pastor was so passionate about worship. I mean, he was an incredibly gifted Bible teacher, but I feel like even before that, he was passionate about just worship.
Yeah,
And I remember he would always tell us when we were planning our worship sets to make sure we had a moment in the worship set that he called a spirit song.
yeah,
And it was a moment. He was like, "You'll know it's a spirit song when there doesn't have to be any lyrics up on the screen, when people could all have their eyes closed, they're not watching anything, and they just know the lyrics and they can just sing it. It's just
yeah,
them and God."
yeah.
And that's the spirit song moment. And he's like, "I want every worship set to have a spirit song moment and be intentional
Hmm.
about that as you design your worship set." And that's what we did. And I felt like that was such a great tool as a worship leader to be able to teach your congregation about what does it mean? Like, why are we singing? Why are
Hmm.
we lifting our hands? What does it mean to kneel and worship? Like, and a lot of these songs are perfect for that because they
Hmm.
are just simple and they actually say like what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
It's not some weird like abstract artist thing of like someone, you know, that it's a moment where you can actually close your eyes and sing what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. So good, Matt. It's like all of these thoughts reside deep in your spirit. This is how you were formed, and even I mean, Loop community. You were helping churches reach the heights of complexity, like triggering Ableton, triggering lights and smoke
Yeah.
machine and, tracks and click. And so do you ever just think about all
It,
that and go like, what am I doing? Can we just get back to the acoustic? I mean, I'm the same. I'm trying to
yes,
get
for real.
orchestras and choirs and, I'm trying to
No, I
fill the
agree.
stage with 200 people.
If it were up to me,
Yeah.
I'd be at a church that only plays 80s and 90s. Yeah, some 2000s, like early
Yeah.
2000s
Yeah.
worship.
Yeah.
Um, and simple, just acoustic guitar. I mean, I remember when I first started leading worship as a 13-year-old, 14-year-old, we had no in-ear monitors. We had no lighting. I think we had some can lights, like literally like those track lights that people use in their house now. Like
Yeah.
that's what we had.
Yeah.
And it was just
Crazy.
on or off.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
simple.
Yeah.
I love it.
Well, I think all that we can really take from this conversation is there's nothing stopping someone listening to us here and just receiving this into your heart and thinking about, like, even I'm planning to lead worship in a week and a half, and I'm going to take your thought about the Spirit song to think, I wonder if there's a way I could plan to not be just pushing through verse chorus bridge end, like, could it be a song where we could almost turn the projector off and
Yeah.
and let some of the beauty of this whole era still shine through our current, because the reality is we're not changing. We're not going to just become all retro, churches. We're not just going to acoustic guitars and only. It's not our reality, but we can be intentional in trying to carry the riches of what we're talking about in, but it
Yeah.
does take intentionality. It's almost like the default is just go get 5 tracks from Loop Community, press play them till the end, and it's
Well,
gonna be awesome, right?
there's ways you can do it. Like I would think like a song like Same God.
Yeah,
That's a modern song. I start singing like Same God, like what goes along with that. And then you could throw in maybe at the end of Same God, you could just go into Our God is an awesome God, he reigns
yeah,
from launch into something like that.
yes, it's
Or
good.
I mean, there's so many that you could just do just little teeny moments just to get people singing,
Yeah,
turn off the screens and just let people,
yeah,
hopefully by that point you've led them to a place where they're ready just to sing like right to God.
yeah.
So
Love it. So good, Matt. Thank you. Thanks for
yeah,
sharing your heart with us and just kind of going down this little bit of memory lane. And it's like we're going, hunting for the treasures of our, where we were formed, right? And there is treasure there. Even in this conversation, I feel like we're just like, I don't know, walking through our lives, looking for where
yeah.
is the gold, and it's definitely there. So,
There's things about that era I don't miss, Ryan, like literally cutting and pasting chord charts out onto a piece of paper and then scanning them into a
Yeah.
copier at like 70% and then duplicating them. I mean,
yes.
making a chord song book
No.
for your band was a pain back then. I don't miss
Or how
that.
about the overhead projector? I mean, certainly we've
Yeah.
I
all
know.
got a
Miss
couple
that.
overhead projector stories,
Oh yeah.
Don't
right?
miss that.
Like the ET that was sitting on the
Oh yeah.
stage, right? That we
Yeah. That was my job as a kid was the overhead projector. And I would do like all sorts of
yeah,
little transitions by like fading it in or like doing
really?
like doing a
Yeah.
twirl.
No way.
Oh
Wow.
yeah.
Oh, at one point I had 4 overhead projectors. I had to get 4 volunteers to simultaneously project 2 on the stage and then 2 to the back. But then the problem is that they were misaligned with lyrics because we were singing hymns that some had been updated and some not. So that was a bit like,
Wow.
oh no.
Wow.
So, well,
I
there's some
remember when
things.
PowerPoint became a thing and it was so
Yes.
exciting. Like that
Yeah.
technology. And I remember we just plugged it into a TV. I don't even think we had a projector at the very beginning.
Mm-hmm. I would
But
almost say that my most early fascination with the production of things like before praise charts was how much I loved making the master copy that would be photocopied onto a transparency and become an overhead. I just like loved that process and picking the font and putting them in. Do you remember those like cardboard? Did you have the cardboard frames that you would tape them onto? But Matt, your thing of doing the fade in and twirling out, wow, that is next level.
I just had a crazy memory.
Okay.
I remember my job was running the overhead projector at our church. And I remember one morning we were doing a new Vineyard song. This was in the 90s. But this song, we'd have to Google it to find it because it was called Holy Mountain. Yeah. And I remember it went, come down from your holy mountain.
Yeah.
Like water on the land. Come down from your holy mountain and da-da-da. 'Cause we believe in you, that your word is true, that you died and rose again. Do you remember that song?
No.
That's a deep cut. I'm going to look that up after this. But anyways, that was a new song we were doing. It was called Holy Mountain. And I made the final copy of the transparency for that Sunday morning. Printed it out, on the thin transparency. And the ink was still wet. And I set it down on a chair next to me. And my youth leader, I remember, came by and walked by and sat down right on top of it with like khaki pants.
Yeah.
And on the back of his pants, when he got up, it said Holy Mountain. And he was so mad. And I was like, I just printed that.
No.
It was amazing.
Oh.
We don't have to deal with that stuff.
Such good stories. Okay. Are we going to keep that in the podcast, Chad? I don't know. Does that go to the cutting floor? I think we keep it.
I think that's got to stay.
Okay.
We're wanting nostalgia here. There you go.
We do. So. Matt, this whole conversation is going to stay. This has been really good. And I know that we both share such a great honor for all the great worship leaders, the Paul Balash, the Don Moens, there's so many names that we have a great regard for, and we're kind of carrying their torch. I know for me, like whatever I can do when I come across these worship leaders, I want to sort of lift them up and do whatever I can in my world of praise charts to just say thank you, like Paul Balash, he'll call me up, be like, got a new version of Open the Eyes of My Heart, Lord. And I'm like, I'm on it. We're doing the piano vocal and making the music to lift that song again. And because I just want to pour back to them. So I know you're in that world as well. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. So good to see where the world of Loop community has come, Matt. As a founder, it's a very unique place that you have to have been a part of founding that and seeing you're a visionary and thank you for doing that. And I'm glad to know it's you that is kind of like leading that because you have this kind of authentic spirit from which it was all birthed from, and you've kind of like let that shine through a little bit in this conversation. Yeah. So
that's awesome.
Thank you for that.
Thanks for saying that.
Yeah, good to do that. Chad, thanks for bringing us together. We're all together. It's like if you look at those posters, that you're going out to different churches, you'll see there little praise charts, little Loop community logos there. That's just a sign that we're behind you and appreciate all you're doing, buddy.
Well, thank you all so much. And it's a joy to walk this journey with y'all, and we'll keep at it.
I can't wait for it to come to Chicago.
We got to get that plan. I've got it on my list to be working on, so hopefully we'll make some progress soon on that.
All right. Awesome. Sounds good. Well, this is Ryan Dahl, Matt McCoy, Chad Gentry with the 90s Worship Podcast, and stay tuned for the next great episode. Thank you, Matt. Talk to you later. Awesome.
Such formative years in my life.